Week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's top 36 wide receivers. This week's a no bye week, surprisingly, after 6 teams were on bye last week. Number 1, Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill, we know he's having a monster season. He might break all types of records this year, and this week with a good matchup versus the New England Patriots, a team that he's very familiar with over the last few seasons. I know Belichick's going to game plan, try to triple team, take Hill out, but I don't think it's going to work. And this week, I got him at 1. Number 2, Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. So Stefon Diggs, he's having a great season once again for this Bill team, and it just pretty much 80-90 yards and a touchdown at least, it seems like, minimum each and every week. So this week here versus a secondary of the Tampa Bay Bucks that isn't all that great, I think Diggs once again has a good ball game, and I got him at 2. Number 3, A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. So the last month of the season, A.J. Brown's been a man possessed and a guy putting up some monster numbers now with over 100 yards in the last 3 games. So this week versus a very weak Washington Commanders secondary, they really can't stop anyone. And this Eagle offense, they just keep putting points up week after week. They had that one hiccup in week 6 at the New York Jets, but A.J. Brown still had a monster game in this one. And once again, I think he does this week. Number 4, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. So St. Brown weekly, he's moving up these rankings pretty quickly. One of the best possession wide receivers in the league. One of the best route runners. Last week, I know they got blown out 38-6, but he still had 11 catches in that ball game and over 100 yards of St. Brown. So this week here versus a Vegas Raiders secondary that really can't stop anyone. I think St. Brown has a good ball game once again, and I got him at 4. Number 5, Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams. So Cooper Kupp, he looks like he's 100%. They gave him plenty of time off for 4 weeks with the hamstring injury. And this week here, it's a good matchup at the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think Cooper Kupp is a guy they're going to stop as this Cowboys secondary. I know they got Stephon Gilmore and Bland, who's been solid this season, but Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, dangerous combination. And last week, Cooper Kupp had an off game. So after coming off an off game, I think a big bounce back is happening in this one. And if they want to keep up with this Cowboy team, they're going to have to put points on the board. And the way to beat this defense is stretch them out. We saw the 49ers do it a few weeks ago. So I think Kupp is back with a big one. Number 6, Ja'Marr Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Ja'Marr Chase, he got off to a slow start early in the season, but the last few weeks he's starting to get things going, especially that eruption he had in week 5 at the Arizona Cardinals. 192 yards on 15 catches and 3 touchdowns. So this week a tough matchup at the 49ers, but we just saw Jordan Addison go off for a big game. So Ja'Marr Chase and Burrow, they're trying to get things going once again. Bengals 3-3, this is a big game, and I think Chase in this one has a good one once again. Number 7, Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams. He really hasn't missed a beat with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup. And last week, what a game it was for Nacua. 8 catches, 154 yards, so he could run all the routes. He could go up and get the jump ball. We saw an acrobatic grab for him last week. And they played well versus a good Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So this week here at the Dallas Cowboys, another good defense, but I think beatable in that secondary. I got him at 7. Number 8, Keenan Allen of Los Angeles Chargers. So Keenan Allen, he's top 5 in receptions in the league this season. I know last week was an off game, but him and Herbert, they've just missed on some big plays over the last few weeks. Versus the Cowboys, if he hit them in stride, it would have been an 80-yard touchdown. And then last week, he missed them in the back of the end zone on a timing route. And then another timing route as well where Allen had tons of running room. So this week here versus a weak Chicago secondary, and if Herbert and Allen could get right back on the same page, he's due for another monster game. Number 9, Chris Olave and New Orleans Saints. I don't know if Olave's going to play in this game time of recording the video, but if he does, I got him in number 9. This could be a potential shootout. And Derek Carr and Olave, they just missing on some big games as well. So Olave, I know he had an off-the-field issue, speeding on his motorcycle, got arrested. I don't know if he's going to play in this game, but like I said, if he does, he's 9. Number 10, Davante Adams of the Vegas Raiders. You want to talk about a guy who I think is going to break out any week now, it's Davante Adams. When you count him out is when he goes off and has a big game. And on the big stage here, Monday Night Football at the Detroit Lions, that just got torched by that Baltimore Raven offense. I think this could be a potential mini shootout. I know it's going to be Aiden O'Donnell or Brian Hoyer most likely in this game, but Davante Adams last week, he started getting going a little bit, even though Jacoby Myers is the wide receiver over here in Vegas that's obviously taking advantage of defenses and finding the end zone. So if Adams could just find that end zone, he'll really be getting things going once again. But anyway, this week, I think the breakout's coming. And I got him at 10, number 11, CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. So CeeDee Lamb, a lot of scrutiny over the last few weeks with people calling him out there. He's not really a number one wide receiver. And him and Dak Prescott even having talks to try to get back on the same page. And we saw it a few weeks ago on Monday Night Football where Lamb went over 100 yards. So this week, they need a big game out of him. It's a tough matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams. But I think CeeDee Lamb's going to rise to the occasion once again. And I got him at 11, number 12, Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Mike Evans, we know, is a big play wide receiver. We know it's a contract season, but him and Baker Mayfield have been on the same page, and they're hitting on that over-the-top deep ball this season, where Mike Evans and Brady, surprisingly last season, for the majority of the year, weren't. So right now, Mike Evans, he's back to form like he's been throughout his career. I know last season he had 1,000 yards, but he barely made it towards the end of the season. But this year, he's putting up top 15 numbers easily, even in a tough matchup versus Buffalo in a Thursday night game where points will be scored. I got him at 12-13, Adam Thielen of the Carolina Panthers. So Thielen, he's been putting up numbers for this Panther team, and a lot of people thought he was washed, especially the Minnesota Vikings that cut him loose. And he just signed a one-year deal here with the Panthers. But right now, the Panthers have been trailing all season and a lot of garbage time. But we know Thielen's a good route runner and has great hands. So this week versus a young Houston secondary, I think Thielen once again is going to go out there and make plays. And he's been a PPR machine this season. Number 14, Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers. So Ayuk, he got off to a hot start the first few drives of that game in Week 7 at the Vikings, but then he fizzled out a little bit, only finishing with 10.5 fantasy points. But this week here, a good matchup versus the Bengals. This 49er team, they got to get back on track. And with Deebo Samuel most likely out once again in this one, I think Ayuk has a good game. Number 15, Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings. So Addison stepping up over the last few weeks, becoming the number one wide receiver over there for this Minnesota Viking team, with Justin Jefferson out possibly longer than the few more weeks that he has on IR. So Addison, we know he made a crazy catch, stealing the ball from Jimmy Ward in the air and scoring a 60-yard touchdown. And this week here, he's got a decent matchup at a mediocre Green Bay secondary. So right now, like I said, Addison, he can run all the routes. He had a great college career. And right now, him and Kirk Cousins have a good rapport. And he's already got 6 touchdowns in his rookie season. Number 16, DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. So DJ Moore, it's been a great first season for him with this Bear team. I know last week the numbers weren't all that great, but he at least gets double-digit fantasy points each and every week. And this week it's Tyson Beckett once again at the starting quarterback for this Bear team, where they're running more of a traditional offense over here, looked like in last week's game versus the Raiders. DJ Moore, great route runner. We know he's got that yard after catch breakaway speed. And this week it's a good matchup at the Chargers, where their secondary gets torched weekly by wide receivers. But with Beckett in there, I think they're going to run a lot in this game. So I got more at 16-17, Jacoby Myers of the Vegas Raiders. So Myers, Patriots let him walk and sign Juju Smith-Schuster in the offseason instead to the same 3-year, $33 million deal. And Myers right now has outplayed Smith-Schuster by a wide margin, and he's fitting this Raider offense perfectly. The other side of the field to Devontae Adams. So Adams getting the coverage, and Myers, that one-on-one coverage, is taking advantage and putting up numbers. And this week here with a pretty decent matchup with the Lions, they don't have that great of a secondary. I got him at 17, and it wouldn't be surprising if he found the end zone once again. 18, Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. So Waddle, he left that game on Sunday Night Football in Week 7 in Philly with a back injury, but he manned it out, and he came back in the third quarter, and he finished with a decent game. So this week here in a matchup versus a banged-up secondary of the New England Patriots, I think Jalen Waddle, as long as he's healthy and plays in this game, once again will get anywhere from 15, 18 PPR points. This week is the number 2 receiver, number 19, George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Pickens, he's starting to emerge as the number 1 man over there in Pittsburgh, and him and Kenny Pickett have a good rapport. I know Deontay Johnson is back, and this week he's got a beatable matchup versus the Jaguars, where I think he could have another solid game. Number 20, Michael Pittman of the Indianapolis Colts. So Michael Pittman and Gardner Minshew, they've been on the same page this season. I know last week Pittman, he was fluky, he had only 2 catches, 85 yards and a touchdown, but he's a big play wide receiver. Him and Minshew, like I said, have been on the same page this season. And to be honest, Minshew's hit him more Anthony Richardson did when Richardson was playing before he went down with injury. So right now, Michael Pittman and Minshew, for the remainder of the season, I believe Minshew's going to be the quarterback for this team, unless he really struggles. But the last few weeks, he's been moving the football and keeping this team in it. Number 21, DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf, he was banged up. He missed last week's game as a late scratch. But this week, I think he returns in this one. And this is a big game for the Seahawks. The Seahawks team playing pretty solid football. But obviously at the wide receiver position, it's been inconsistent this season. Tyler Lockett, he really hasn't done much this year. Smith-Njigba, he's starting to get into the playbook a little bit. But anyway, DK Metcalf, he returns in this game. I think he's a decent number 2 wide receiver. And I got him at 21, 22, Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Smith's a big-time boom or bust type of wide receiver. But this week here, a good matchup at the Commanders, a team he torched early in the season on Thursday Night Football for 2 touchdowns and had only over 25 fantasy points. So right now, it's been the A.J. Brown show over the last month of the season, and Dallas Goedert, the last 3 out of 4 weeks, has had good ball games. But right now, Smith, I think in this one, it just takes one deep ball to make his day. And you know, this Philly offense spreads that ball around. So I got Smith at 22, 23, Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Calvin Ridley, obviously they traded for him at the deadline last season. And coming into the year, Ridley was the number 1, but the last few weeks he's really fizzled out, is Ridley, and hasn't put numbers on. So Christian Kirk, he's been consistent week in and week out. This week he's got a decent matchup at the Steelers that we just saw Puka Nacua go for 154 on this defense. I think Christian Kirk have a decent ball game, and him and Trevor Lawrence have been on the same page and have a great rapport. 24 Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. Zay Flowers, it's been an impressive rookie season so far for him, and that's just what the doctor ordered here for Lamar Jackson, a young wide receiver that could run the routes, could burn secondaries, and you could use him different ways in different formations. And this week here, what a good matchup at the Arizona Cardinals, one of the weakest secondaries in the league. I think Flowers once again has solid number 2 wide receiver numbers. Number 25, Nico Collins of the Houston Texans. So Collins, he's had some monster games this season, and then some games where he doesn't show up, but that's expected, obviously, with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, even though he's years past where he should be at the rookie level. C.J. Stroud's a poised quarterback. He's like a veteran in this league, the way he handles the huddle and his command in the pockets. I think this week in a good matchup with the Carolina Panthers, Collins has a good game. 26, Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. If Garrett Wilson had a legit quarterback over there, like say if Rodgers didn't get hurt, Garrett Wilson each and every week's a top 10, 15 at worst wide receivers. So this week here, it's a beatable matchup at a Giant secondary with a lot of young players, even though this New York Giant defense the last few weeks has really locked in and played good football, only giving up 21 points in the last 2 games, 14 to Buffalo in week 6, and then week 7 pretty much locking up that Commander offense to only 7. So right now, Garrett Wilson, if they just could get the ball with Zach Wilson in the vicinity of Wilson to give him a chance to make plays, we possibly could see a breakout game from him. 27, Drake London, the Atlanta Falcons. Drake London, he's definitely a talented wide receiver as well, but the same issue that Garrett Wilson has, London has. Desmond Ridder, one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league. He's pretty much targeting running backs out of the backfield on underneath routes, and Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith, and it really hasn't been him stretching the field a lot to Drake London. I know London a few weeks ago had 125 yards receiving, but besides that, it's pretty much been a pedestrian season. So this week here, I know it's a good matchup with Tennessee where you could throw the football a lot, and receivers have been putting big numbers up on them all season. But this week here, I don't see much out of London. I see a lot of running and underneath once again with Ridder. So he's 27, 28, Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. So I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to play in this game. And we've seen Cooper not do much the last 2 out of 3 weeks where he's had bad performances. And Cooper on the road throughout his career, he's been known for being a wide receiver that disappears and don't put numbers. At home, he's a way better wide receiver. Whatever the case may be, it's just been a thing with Cooper going back to Vegas and then traded to the Cowboys. You saw that a lot with him on the road, having stinkers and been non-existent. So this week here, road game at Seattle, a pretty solid secondary where they've shut down some good wide receivers over the last few weeks here. I don't have high hopes for Cooper. I got him at 28, 29, T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. So T. Higgins, it's been a real struggle for him this season. I know Joe Burrow's got something to do with that, not being 100% and able to make all the throws at full throttle with a banged-up calf. But right now, it's a tough matchup here at San Francisco. But Joe Burrow should be closer to 100%, or at least healthiest he's been all season. But right now, I'm still pumping the brakes on T. Higgins because he's got a bad injury as well, dealing with bruised, even fractured ribs over the last few weeks. So this week here with a tough matchup and him not doing much, we got to see it out of T. Higgins before I can move him up the rankings Right now, number 30, Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders. So Terry McLaurin, we know he's a short-handed wide receiver. We know he could run the routes. We know he could beat the secondary. He could get those jump balls and do it all. And he's definitely an underrated wide receiver for sure, is Terry McLaurin. But this week here, tough matchup versus a Philadelphia secondary that just got reinforcements trading for Bird from the Tennessee Titans. And Terry McLaurin, I still think he could put up a decent game. But with all these teams playing this week and no bye weeks, he definitely moves down the rankings. And like I said, Sam Howell, I know he's put up some numbers this season, but it's been mostly garbage time for the most part. So if there's no garbage time, Terry McLaurin, his numbers drop as well. 31, Joshua Palmer, the Los Angeles Chargers. So Joshua Palmer's filling in nicely here for Mike Williams, who's obviously out for the season with the torn ACL. And Palmer last season, he got a lot of playing time when Keenan Allen missed a lot of games last year, and Mike Williams was out for a few as well. So he's a speed, so he's a burner as well as Joshua Palmer. Good route runner, and he ball in his area as well. He's been making the catches. So right now, good matchup versus the Chicago Bears. But like I said, with all these receivers playing this week here, it's tough to pretty much rank Palmer in the top 24. But anyway, as a flex option or a third wide receiver in 3 receiver leagues, he's a great play. 32, Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts. So this Colt team, they're starting to find some guys in this offense over the last few seasons. Obviously, it was Michael Pittman 2 seasons ago emerged. Jonathan Taylor a few seasons ago emerging as one of the better backs. And now Josh Downs emerging. So if you got 3 good weapons on this offense, even though Gardner Minshew I know isn't the greatest of quarterbacks, but he's a quarterback as a backup that's at least competent and can get the football out and make some big plays down the field. So Josh Downs, he's got speed. He could run all the routes, and he's been finding the end zone. So this week here in a potential shootout with the New Orleans Saints in the fast turf over there in Indianapolis in another home game, I got him at 32, 33. Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So definitely a tough matchup here versus the Buffalo Bills. And Chris Godwin, we know he's not really a wide receiver that has found the end zone a lot over the last few seasons. But him and Baker Mayfield are starting to get on the same page. Godwin, we know he's a good possession receiver. And for PPR leagues, he's perfect for 6-7 catches per game. So this week here in a game where it could be garbage time a lot or playing catch-up, I think he could put in a decent performance. At 33, 34, Calvin Ridley of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So like I mentioned, Calvin Ridley, he's disappeared over the last 2 weeks where he got off to a nice start the first week of the season. And then it was one game good, one bad game. And now the last few weeks, he's disappeared. So this week here in a mediocre matchup at a grinded-out type of defense of the Pittsburgh Steelers where they make you earn it, even though, like I said, Nakua went for 8 for 154, but Cooper Kupp didn't do much in that game. Calvin Ridley, you can't really have obviously much confidence in him, especially with every team playing this week as well. He definitely drops down the board. And the number 35, Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks. So Tyler Lockett, I know he's a great route runner. I know he's a burner that could get by pretty much any corner or secondary. But this season, him and Geno Smith have been off here. But right now, it's another tough matchup versus the Cleveland Browns. I have a solid secondary and one of the best corners in the league in Denzel Ward. We don't know if he's going to cover Metcalf or just on the side of the field he's going to cover or roam with Lockett. But anyway, Lockett's numbers are down. He hasn't done much over the last few weeks, and I got him at 35 in the 36th and final wideout is Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Johnson, he came back off injured reserve last week, and he had a decent ball game. 5 catches, 79 yards in that one at the Los Angeles Rams. So we know he's a good route runner. We know he's got great hands and a good possession wide receiver. But Kenny Pickett's an inconsistent quarterback. And right now, to be honest, it looks like George Pickens is emerging as the number 1 wide receiver over there in Pittsburgh. But still as number 3 wide receiver or flex option, I think Deontay Johnson can help fantasy owners in a big way. And even with Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett, like I mentioned, it wouldn't surprise me if these guys have breakout games. But what I've seen from them over the last few weeks is why they're down in the rankings right now. So that's the top 36 wide receivers I'm ranking here for Week 8 of the fantasy football season.